Yeah.
Okay, so good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us again. I hope we get some more people coming on. I'm very pleased and honored to have Allison Sesso joining us today as the guest speaker. Allison is the executive director of a group called RIP Medical Debt, which is really very important to businesses and individuals. And before we hear from her today, we'll do our usual go round. So Wendy, would you mind starting?
Hi, good morning. I'm Wendy Pafgenero, the Director of Development for Queen Centers for Progress.
Hi, I'm Alex, and I work with Wendy at Queen Centers for Progress as a consultant. And we started this business networking group in March of 2020, and we're very grateful that you folks have continued to stay with us. And I'll make an announcement, we're going to have a cocktail mixer, a live in-person event on July 21st in Belrose, Queens. I'll put that information in, and we hope you folks will all join us. Carl, would you mind giving a brief introduction?
Thank you so much, and thank you, Wendy, and thank you, John. I'm currently with Hydrate. We do three main areas that help companies become more COVID compliant: water, air, and ice. On the water side, it's all purified, hands-free. No one touches anything. So that allows the water not only to be purified, but again, no one needs to touch any systems. On the air side, we provide air sterilization systems that remove the COVID virus and other contaminants from the air and surfaces. Actually, nothing touches the surfaces and makes the air 99% totally pure and removes, as I said, everything from Mercer on down the line.
Thank you. Steve Karp.
Good morning, everybody. Stephen Karp with Variable Promotions. We are a 75-year, maybe even 76, because I've been doing this for a while, full service commercial printer and supplier of promotional items.
Thank you. Tony Foy.
Hi, I'm Tony Foy from LaGuardia Community College. I work for LaGuardia Performing Arts Center. I am the Education and Community Outreach Coordinator. We manage the stage, working in also with communities as well as within the community of the college.
Okay. Mara. Hi, Mara.
Ooh. Good morning. Good morning. Mara Ohanian, Cruise Planners. It's a travel agency, full service travel agency representing American Express Travel. I do all kinds of travel, individual, groups, land, cruises. My personal favorite is river cruises. I'm just here to tell you that even after 2 people test positive on Celebrity Millennium, doesn't mean that the world stops. Everything went fine and travel is growing, just so you know.
Thank you. David.
And find that unmute button. David Feinberg from Israel. I grew up in New Jersey and New York. My connections are mainly there. Coming on these calls as a networker, as a connector, connecting people with unique products and services. Perhaps some of the things that people I'm introducing to for some of these products may be helpful for you, and or perhaps what you have is something that I can help promote and add that to my list.
Thank you.
David Feinberg in Israel. I'll post my info on the list.
Ben Horowitz.
So you got to scroll over and get to the unmute button real quick. So Benjamin Horowitz, I'm the CEO of BSB Consultants. We specialize in group health insurance for businesses that range from 2 employees up to a couple of thousand.
Thank you. And Stacy Wells, she's a new member. Welcome, Stacy. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, my name is Stacy. I'm owner of Earns Cleaning Agency. Thank you for the invite, and I'm excited to see how this group goes.
Thank you. Welcome. Nancy Vargas.
Good morning, everyone. Nancy Vargas here from DH2, Chauffeur Transportation. What we do is provide safe and private ground transportation services. So if you are planning a trip with your family or you're attending a event, a wine tour, a wedding, think of DH2. We have a great fleet where we can provide you safe transportation services. Thank you very much.
Hi, thank you. Robert Diaz.
Good morning, everyone. Robert Diaz, financial advisor with Edward Jones, domicile located in Plainview. I specialize in helping individuals and business owners with their long-term financial planning goals and needs, centering around securities, consulting, but on a broader sense, a very holistic, comprehensive practice, also consulting on issues relating to preparing for the unexpected, a child's education, as well as retirement planning. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Melinda, welcome back.
Hey, everybody. Good morning. Melinda Reyes. My business is Premier Merchant Consulting Services. We help businesses to get paid. We can help solopreneurs up to multi-location businesses and corporations to receive their payments securely and quickly, funding into their bank, and finding the right technology, the right software, point-of-sale system. We have terminals, smart terminals, and apps, and online, what I call omni-channel means. So if any business has to be paid face-to-face and as well as online, and make sure that those things can integrate to keep them on track. So anybody here wants to stay in touch, I'm going to put my information on the chat, and I look forward to meeting everybody.
Thank you. Annette, welcome back.
I just had to unmute. How are you all?
Good.
Thanks for having me. So we're just introing, yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Annette Roth. I'm from Northwell Health. And what I do is set up free health lectures in the community, being done virtually now, for many venues. Your organization, perhaps. The goal is to give back to the community. We are a not-for-profit, regardless of how large we are, and it's our way of doing community service. So if you feel that you would like to have these free health lectures for your members or your employees, I will put my info in the chat, and I would love to be able to offer you this service. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Martin.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Martin Ridges. I'm an insurance broker, MKR Specialty, independent brokerage firm, and Farmers Insurance Group. And so I work with people on with their business insurance as well as their personal insurance. And it's quite exciting as businesses start to open up. And the good news from upstate, hopefully things will be starting to generate more together, and we actually can meet each other. I look forward to hopefully in the near future.
Thank you. Well, you're welcome to meet everybody on July 21st. We're having a mixer at the Queens location, at the Queens Center's location. So I'll put that again. Everybody's welcome to join. And finally, John Rafferty.
Good morning, everyone. I'm sorry I have my video off. I'm driving out east. I'm the owner of WatchGuard 24/7. We're a full-service security guard company. We provide security guards, concierges, and fire safety directors to the residential commercial markets throughout New York and New Jersey.
Thank you. And it looks like we have one more person. Adele, would you mind introducing yourself briefly?
Sure. Sorry, I'm late. Adele Viola. I'm a cause entrepreneur with One Hope Wines. We are a charity-based vineyard, which we have in Napa, and we help nonprofits raise money for their causes through the sale of wine, whether it be personal consumption, corporate gifting, golf outings, anything like that. We just hit 7 million in donations to over 25,000 nonprofits. So it's a pretty impressive company. Would love to tell you some more. Reach out.
Thank you. Please put your contact information in the chat window so people can reach you. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Okay, so today I'm very pleased and honored, like I said, to have Allison Sesso join us as a guest speaker. Allison is the executive director of an amazing nonprofit called RIP Medical Debt, which I heard about a couple years ago. And I'm very glad to be able to give her this opportunity to have her tell you about the group. Before we do that, and she gives her presentation, I wanted to share the video that talks a little bit about that organization. So bear with me, and here we go.
100 million Americans, or 1 in 3, have struggled with the weight of medical debt, causing many to deplete their savings, turn to crowdfunding, declare bankruptcy, or worse, delay the medical care they need to stay alive. More than half of Americans say getting a bill they can't afford is as scary as a serious diagnosis itself. Our debt is killing us. But what if we could make that debt disappear? We're RIP Medical Debt, a nonprofit that has done just that, eliminating billions of dollars in debt for struggling Americans. We are working not only to shift the way we think about medical debt, but change the lives of people living in its shadow. So how do we abolish billions of dollars in debt without billions of dollars? By using the rules of the game, not to win, but to create a world where we take care of those who need it most. When you go to a doctor's office, hospital, or clinic, you might get a separate bill for every step of your care. If these bills aren't paid, they can be sold to a debt buyer for a fraction of what you owe. However, they will still attempt to collect the full amount owed from you. Some will add negative marks to your credit report, affecting your ability to buy a car or home, while others will even take legal action, resulting in wage garnishments and property liens. These actions used to leverage payment threaten the financial health of hardworking Americans who have this debt through no fault of their own. That's where we come in. RIP Medical Debt works with our partners to see through the chaos and find those debts that will be the most impactful when relieved. While we can't search for a particular individual's debt, we can filter them down to make sure we're serving the people who are least able to pay. With our donor support, we're able to buy millions of dollars of debt at drastically reduced pricing, which makes this disappearing act one of monumental proportions. But we don't stop there. We make sure any negative marks on credit scores for the debt we buy are removed. So not only can recipients forget their past, but they can begin to move forward. Our programs put no additional tax burden on the recipients and are compliant with HIPAA and the Fair Credit Reporting Act. And after all the behind-the-scenes work is done, every year we send out thousands of letters to homes all across the country, letting people know their past is in the past. Their health is not a burden, and their life is worth more than a bill. And together, we'll cure medical debt.
So that's a little bit about the organization. And let me just read a little bit about Allison. This is really, it's a wonderful, I hope you don't mind, Allison, I'm reading directly from your website. So Allison has served as the Executive Director of the Human Services Council of New York City since March 14th, and served previously as the Deputy Executive Director. The HSC is an association of 170 nonprofits, delivering 90% of human services in New York City. And also, Allison has led the citywide Sustain Our Sanctuary campaign, which successfully pushed for investment in human services contracts totaling over $300 million. And now she is the executive director of RIP Medical Debt, which you just heard about. So I'm very pleased to have you join us today, Allison. And the floor is yours. We would love to hear about what your organization does.
Great. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I am excited to have switched careers, and now I work, head up this national organization. But my heart's in New York City. That's where I spent most of my time, and obviously the work affects us here too. And obviously, I come at this work from a social services, social justice lens, and so I think that's just important background about me and how I approach this work. And I really see the issue of medical debt not only unfortunately growing, but I see it as a clash between our financial health, the way we finance healthcare systems being broken, as well as the economic system being broken. Because at the end of the day, what we're doing at RIP is we're relieving the debts of individuals, but a lot of those debts, unfortunately, are not $200,000 debts. They're $1,000 debts, and to me, that's not an indication of just the healthcare financing system being broken, but it means that people don't have $1,000 to spare, and that to me, really is important to note. And I think for this group, you're all small business owners. You're looking your businesses, and so if people that are living throughout the country don't have spare money to support things like medical debt, they also, have less money to support, buying things from you and buying services and products. And so, it's important that we think about this economic situation that is increasingly making it so that people are really living paycheck to paycheck and trying really hard to put things together. And that's really where I come at this work. So I'm going to share my screen and just talk through some of the, a little bit more about RIP. So let me share screen. Here we go. Okay, can you see this?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is our, hold on, if I can get to this. Okay, this is our mission statement. We do three main things. So, I'll read you the highlights, which is, medical debt is a uniquely American injustice. It prevents millions from achieving financial stability and subjects them to emotional anguish. Our mission is to end medical debt and be a source of justice in an unjust healthcare finance system, a unique solution for patient-centered healthcare providers, and a moral force for systemic change. I mean, and essentially what the point of each of these is the first bullet is really about the fact that we are helping individuals. When we relieve a debt for an individual, it takes a huge burden off of them. And that's really important. It allows them to have more financial freedom. It allows them to have better credit. And it also takes emotional anguish away from the individual. And so that's the most important, and what really drives the work is the impact on recipients. The other thing is, we really are a solution for hospitals. Hospitals struggle with a lot of bad debt. They struggle to be community members. I think we have somebody from Northwell Health on this call, who talked about their role as a nonprofit and a community member and serving the community. But this dynamic in terms of the payment and the what it takes to support a system, hospitals get beat up for suing patients left and right, and that's an unfortunate way in which our system works. Is that at the end of the road, there's not a lot that hospitals can do, and so they end up suing patients. Now, some are more egregious than others, and they're supposed to be providing charity care, and many do provide lots of charity care, but still, at the end of the day, the burdens of medical debt are severe for a lot of people. And frankly, I think I'd like hospitals to focus more on doing the caring for patients and doing the interventions and the supports of their medical needs, as opposed to figuring out how to finance this and how to follow up with people and get the funding. Although that's an important element of it in order to provide the care, I think we have a particular situation where that's the dynamic that goes on. So what we do if hospitals work with us is we provide a solution for them. On top of that, what we do, at the end of the day, I always say.
Hold on 1 second, please. 1 second.
Can you hear? Oh, sorry. At the end of the day, we are what we do. Shouldn't exist. And it's, again, at the beginning of this, I said it's a uniquely American injustice. It's not something that I wish I could, have a different job, honestly. I love what I do. I think it's really important, but it's, I'm both simultaneously excited by the work that I do every single day, while also being, appalled that this work is needed. And that's really where I sit with this. So we want to take the work that we do and leverage it to really bring attention to the systemic nature of this problem. What are the negative impacts of medical debt? How is it impacting people? Making sure that we are sort of highlighting the fact that we need to do better in terms of the way we finance healthcare, and have a more compassionate, transparent, and equitable and affordable healthcare system at the end of the day. And so that is a sort of public policy lens that we also do this work. We leverage our work toward. By the way, if anyone has questions, please feel free to jump in, but I know that we'll probably have questions at the end too. So there's a couple of facts just to give you a little bit of history about who we are and how we came to be. There is no other organization like us, so we are a unique entity. We are a 501c3 charity, and we do acquire debt. We were founded by two debt buyers who founded us in 2014. Jerry Ashton and Craig Antico, both New Yorkers as well. They work in collections, and they were executives in collections, and they realized that the amount so for people who owe money that don't make a lot of money, those debts are actually a price is set on those, and debt buyers can pay for those, and so that price is very low because it's known that the collectability chances are very low. So we literally can buy debts for pennies on the dollar. And so, we can buy a portfolio from a hospital, that's like a $300 million portfolio of bad debt that actually only costs us, like $1 million, $2 million, depending on the age of the debt within that portfolio. And then when we get that debt, we abolish it. But so it was these debt buyers that understood the economics behind debt buying and how it transfers hands and what its value is that started RIP and really created this model of taking donor funding to buy debt off the debt market, and then instead of collecting on it, relieving it for individuals. So we've been around since 2014. We exploded in, I want to say it was like 2 years later, when John Oliver actually did a segment on medical debt. And he mentioned RIP medical debt, and he relieved all this debt for these individuals through RIP medical debt. And when that happened, RIP's website crashed. I mean, it was a whole moment for RIP when these two struggling debt buyers that were, had this great idea, but were struggling to, run a nonprofit because that wasn't their skill set, got this attention nationally. And then all of a sudden, RIP exploded. We got these great board members that came on board and were interested, and a lot more funding came to the organization. And here we are today. And I'm thrilled to be with the organization. I think as part of our growth and part of our sort of growing up as an institution, the board sought a seasoned executive director for nonprofits to be at the helm, which is how I came to be part of the organization just before COVID hit, actually. We're funded, by donors, by individuals. I like to say we're almost like Bernie Sanders in the way of like fundraising. How he used to always say, like, it's only, my campaign is funded by lots of small donations. Well, that's the same in a lot of respects for RIP medical debt. A lot of churches and faith-based organizations support us. And they crowd fund, if you will, locally from individuals, and could raise $100,000 for by raising small donations within the community, and then they relieve a whole lot of debt with those funds. We do have partnerships with corporations, foundations, and then we have large donors. I mean, Mackenzie Scott, if you're familiar with her, she was formerly Bezos was her former last name until she got divorced, and she's been giving a lot of money away. In fact, I think just yesterday she gave away a couple billion more. Well, she saw us and she gave us $50 million of unrestricted dollars, which is unheard of for nonprofits, in December, and we're putting that money to good use. To date, we've acquired $4.5 billion in medical debt for 2.7 million families. So that's all since 2014. And I'll tell you, the last couple of years we hit the $1 billion. So the first $1 billion, it took us from 2014 until 2019 to do that. And then from then on, we've been really exploding. So we're really in a growth mode, which is great. We've traditionally bought our debt from the secondary debt market, meaning we've bought it from debt buyers who previously bought that debt from hospitals. So most of that 4.5 billion is from the secondary market. So it's already been sold, and then we acquire it. But we have been strategically going in a direction where we're trying to buy debt directly from hospitals. And that is important for a couple of reasons. One, it will allow us to get our hands on the debt earlier. It also opens up a lot more debt. There's a lot of hospitals that do not sell their debt to secondary debt markets at all. So if we really want to, get rid of debt in earnest, we need to have direct relationships with hospitals. So we've been doing that. In fact, just yesterday, our first deal was made public with a hospital, literally just yesterday. There was a piece in the Wall Street Journal that we relieved $278 million of debt for 82,000 people in Tennessee and Southwest Virginia. And that is with a group called Ballad Health. So we're off to the races. And that is a group of 28 hospitals in that region. So I expect there's going to, and there's a lot more in our pipeline coming up. But if you, work with hospitals, or you're, what you have any relationships and you think a hospital should be talking to us, give them our number and tell them to reach out, because we're happy to work with them. We got an opinion from the federal government that approves our model, so that hospitals, because they deal with a lot of regulations, aren't concerned about working with RIP and whether or not this is on the up and up. It absolutely was approved by the federal government. And the value to a hospital is that it gives them a potentially a revenue stream for what's otherwise dormant or uncollectible bad debts. So these are debts that have run through their revenue cycle. So they've tried to collect on them for at least 18 months. And now they basically move them to their books to be considered bad debt, and they just sit there. They don't necessarily continue to collect on them. It depends on the hospital and their practices. But those debts are still owed by the individuals. So if those hospitals sell those debts to us, they can earn revenue on those. I will tell you, though, a lot of hospitals are talking to us about donating those debts to us, and that is extremely community-minded of those hospitals. And we can, obviously get rid of a lot more debt, because it does still have a cost for us to doing the data analysis and actually sending the letters out. But without the overhead purchase price cost, it really allows us to take a donor's dollars and stretch them even further. And even with the purchase price, it's already 100 to 1, meaning $1 alleviates $100 of medical debt on average. We know that medical debt is a social determinant of health, so it's a health equity issue. That means that just having the debt itself can hurt somebody's overall physical well-being. It's the mental anguish. It's not going to the doctor because you are concerned about getting additional medical debt. So it's sort of this great irony of our healthcare system that medical debt actually creates, undermines the well-being and health of individuals, the actual debt itself. So it is a social determinant of health. And hospitals obviously are focused on trying to fix overall health in a community. And so helping to get rid of these debts helps them with that goal. And I think, working with RIP allows hospitals to think about their charity care. I mean, a lot of the debts that we're relieving are ones that probably should have those individuals should have been given charity care. So what's the reasons why they weren't given charity care? Did people not apply? Are their charity care policies not robust enough? Are they not generous enough? What's the story there? And so by working with RIP, you get an analysis back. You get a better sense of why these individuals went to what's called bad debt as opposed to getting the charity care, which hospitals get credit for and actually required if you're a nonprofit hospital, which many are, to do. So why is medical debt a problem? I've sort of sprinkled this information throughout my presentation, but I think it's different than other kinds of debt because it's a debt of necessity. Unfortunately, in this country, we're in, oftentimes you have to give up your financial well-being in order to have your physical well-being, and that's just a trade-off that's not okay. And so it's different. It's not like somebody, overbought in terms of their house, or they, overspent on their credit card because they love fancy shoes or something. This is, a life and death, often literally situation, and they can't help it. So medical debt is different than other debts, and I think that that's important to note. Unfortunately, many people just don't have, as I said earlier, the savings to deal with, buffer the medical bills. And that's again an indication of our broken economic system, and it's an issue. It's a growing problem. It's not getting better. Hospital prices keep going up. Insurance that's available to individuals is going down, meaning not only, yes, we've seen because of certain things that more people are covered with insurance, but the bigger problem is underinsured, meaning that your insurance comes with it. The premium is the prices are outrageous, and on top of that, the deductibles are often ones that can't be met. I mean, I honestly liken some of the insurance that's available to predatory lending, because at the end of the day, if a person has insurance that they know they're not going to be able to meet that deductible, they're going to end up with medical debt because they're going to owe that deductible. And it is very easy to look at an individual and say, wait a minute, you're signing up for a plan that requires you to have a $5,000 deductible. You can't afford a $5,000 deductible. You just have to look at, you know, their financial situation and their income to understand that. And so those people shouldn't be allowed to sign up for those plans. Now, what does that mean? That means the government needs to probably better subsidize those plans for those individuals. But it reminds me of like the subprime mortgage situation that we were in, you know, in 2008. We need to be careful and mindful of what people can afford and get ahead of this and make sure that people are having insurance plans that they can actually afford and meet their budgets. And then we would avoid a lot of medical debt at the back end. You know, this number is actually debatable. There's other ways of saying that it's higher, but 16% of US households have medical debt on their credit reports. And so there's more people that have medical debt than this. It's much higher. It's more like 60%. But that this actually on their credit reports, which is very problematic. And obviously, like a lot of things, it's an equity issue and it's higher in communities of color. It's the leading cause of bankruptcy in the United States, which is disgusting. I just find that really, really appalling that that's, you know, how, and it's, you know, again, uniquely American, that problem. It's like American exceptionalism right there. And you know, as I said earlier, patients do often not get care. They ration their medications. They do things like that because of the fact that they can't. They're concerned. You know, more and more we see people taking Ubers to the ER because they don't want to get in an ambulance, and that's, you know, just disgusting. And obviously, you know, unfortunately, COVID has just exacerbated this. Despite the idea that, you know, government was going to take care of everything, that is not the case. There are many, many stories, many indications that people have a ton of medical debt as a result of COVID. Just to give you a quick overview of our process, how it works for a hospital, or just because I know this is very, no one's familiar with this, and it's something we kind of made up. So, you know, donors come to us and they say, you know, I'd love to alleviate some debt. And sometimes if it's a large enough donation, you can identify a specific area. Like you could say, I would like to alleviate debt specifically in New York. We have to make sure we have debt available in New York and for us to relieve, but that's the idea, that the donor funds are identified. Then we talk to the hospitals. We get their patient accounts sent to us of all their bad debt, and we do an analysis of that file, and we pull out, and we basically take in TransUnion data and compare it. We created a specific, what we call a debt engine. It's a proprietary thing that we created that pulls in the file and TransUnion data. We look at that file, we analyze it to see who qualifies, and I will go over what our qualifications are in a minute, but it's basically people facing financial hardship. We negotiate any of the terms of the transaction, so we sign like a business association agreement with the hospital before all of this. We take title, we transfer the funds to the hospital, we take title to the accounts, we send letters to individuals that say, you didn't sign up for this, but and you don't need to, but we bought your debt and you no longer owe it. Keep this letter as proof of that if anyone ever tries to follow up with you. And if there's any derogatory credit information, that gets removed from the person's credit. The people that are eligible for our program have to be 200% of poverty or below, which is pretty low. But they're also the other one, which captures a lot of people, particularly in a place like New York, is that the medical debt itself has to be 5% of a person's income or more. So that's a big one that captures a lot of people and prevents people from going into poverty as a result of a medical debt. And then the last one is basically insolvency, which is basically facing bankruptcy. That's the other criteria. I would just say this is one that we often tell hospitals about, but I think it's a good slide, which is, compared to a commercial debt buyer, for if a hospital is thinking about selling their debt and they're not sure whether or not they want to go to a commercial debt buyer or sell it to RIP medical debt, the benefits are very clear. On the secondary market or for profit, you receive cash and you get rid of the medical debt off of your books. That's it. Those are all the benefits. When you work with RIP, because our pricing is competitive with for-profits intentionally, so that hospitals that are looking for funding from this do get the competitive rate. So with RIP, you receive the cash, you get rid of the debt, and all these other benefits. There's benefits to the patient. you know, there's benefits to the community that we, you know, our solution results in. And then I just want to, you know, going back to my point earlier, you know, we are researching this, the impact of what we're doing. So we're in the middle of a study that involves like UC Berkeley and a number of other, Harvard and a number of other institutions. And it should be coming out this year, that really looks at both the financial impacts of and credit related impacts of what we do in terms of relieving medical debt, as well as what it means for people's well-being overall, to their mental health and stuff like that. That's it. That's my overall presentation. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you very, very much, Allison. That's just, it's heartbreaking, interesting, you know, it's just all these things. So folks, if there are any questions out there, please raise your hand and let's take it away. Okay, I saw a lot of comments in the chat window. It sounds like this is a very, you know, personal topic for some people. As business owners, have you, you know, what's been the impact of your health insurance rates on your employees or even on yourself? Does anybody care to address that? Go ahead, Martin.
I can let you know that, I mean, working in the insurance industry and working, coming from England and having a national healthcare system, I find it absolutely fascinating that Americans think that national healthcare is really, really bad for them. Because even in England and Europe, you can buy, when I was there, this is back in the 70s and the 80s, it was called top-up insurance. And the only two types, and top-up insurance would allow you to go to private doctors without getting permission from the national healthcare system. And in America, they can give it all the fancy names they want, but there's only two types of insurance. There's a PPO, that's sort of a freedom, and there's an HMO, which is run exactly like a national healthcare system. Exactly. And then when people think, well, it's going to cost more money on my taxes, the tax rates between England and here aren't necessarily that big of a difference. Except if you're really rich, then you pay a lot more. And when you look at the cost of insurance, right, for an average family, they're going to be dropping at least $600 to $1,200 a month. Now, yes, you can do it if you do it through your employer and you figure it out. You can, at times it can be done on gross dollars instead of net dollars. But unless you're earning more than $150,000 a year, you take that, your deductibles and your co-insurances, most Americans are probably paying, if they're paying for insurance, are paying a 10 to 25% rate against their income. And no one seems to get that if we share. And then they argue that, well, young people don't need it as much. Well, the whole point is pay it forward. And so that when I'm 60 years old and going to the doctor, I'm seeing the doctor more than I see my partner, you know, compared to when I was 26, then you're paying it forward. And here we are now with the biggest crisis is likely to hit America because a lot of people got exceedingly happy after World War II, right? Just like whoever's in the World Cup, they have lots more children if they win the World Cup. It's true. Look up the facts. You know, it's like we've got this huge issue that's facing us. And I applaud you for what you're doing. It's just sad because it almost relieves the government from what they need to face.
I mean, I agree with you about that to some degree, except that honestly, what we're doing has more. I'm not willing to sacrifice what it does for the individuals caught in the situation. But I mean, what you're, you know, and honestly, the amount we're paying is not solving this problem. I mean, it's cleaning up a much bigger problem. What we're doing does not pay nearly enough. Again, it's pennies on the dollar. So it's not making up for the costs. And at the end of the day, the financing of our healthcare system needs to be looked at much more carefully. And I agree with your comments. I mean, I think that we have a real problem on our hands that we cannot ignore in this country. And unfortunately, you know, the way healthcare has evolved has been associated with your employer. So you need to be employed in order to have a decent chance of having an affordable care system. And if not, you know, I mean, it's actually amazing. People complain, you know, depending on where you sit politically and what you think about, you know, there's this sort of like, oh, Medicaid is, you know, not a good program. But actually, people who have Medicaid have a lot less medical debt because it is working for them. And that's a government-sponsored system. And increasingly, what we're seeing is that government is pouring more and more money into subsidizing the for-profit healthcare system. It's actually really hard to compare our system to other places because of the fact that it's a for-profit driven system. So the incentives are for-profit compared to something that's government run, which is, you know, a totally different ballgame.
Right, but you still have profitable operations in England and Europe, etc. You know, they have a requirement to have so many national healthcare patients, and they can't reject them. You know, so they've got to balance their income issues with respect to what they're doing there. But it doesn't take away the ability to earn a profit, and for doctors to own homes overseas as well as you know, in England and everything else. There's still that potential to hit that American dream, so to say. You know, and you can, you know, drive anything you want and that sort of thing.
Well, but at the end of the day, you're getting what you need out of the system, and we're not. That's what really it comes down to. We're not getting the health of individuals.
Yeah, if I could jump in here, Allison. So Benjamin Horowitz, I'm the CEO of BSB Consultants. I specialize in group health benefits for organizations. I was just talking to a brand new client of mine. I've actually been working, strategizing with them over the past year. Perfect time that they're launching their company. They're going to be hiring about 1,000 employees over the course of the next 12 months. And the lowest plan that they're going to look to put in place for the organization is almost like a catastrophic type plan. It's still going to cost $600 some odd a month, which we're trying to figure out now. What's the company contribution to make it affordable for employees that are going to be earning about $20 an hour when it's got an $8,500 single and a $17,000 family embedded plan. And, you know, and I'm trying to explain to him that, you know, he's going 17,000. What's an employee earning $20 an hour supposed to do? And I said, unfortunately, your employee gets into an accident or something, and you know, or they get hurt, and they end up in a hospital, and they get a bill for, you know, $50,000. They're paying that, you know, 17,000, boom, right up front, and they just wiped away the whole deductible. But now they're having to negotiate and fight with the hospital, saying they can't afford 17,000, they can't pay for it, and trying to figure out how to strategize on doing that. And the owner is saying, well, maybe can I put a fund together? And I'm just like, you know, where do you stop the bleeding in an organization to try to do the right thing? And then we try to look at plans that are, you know, in the mid eights that have, you know, a $2,000 deductible and a $4,000 family. But now he's going, I can't afford to make that the affordable plan. So it's okay, well, we make the catastrophic plan affordable. So you're complying with ACA, and anything over and above that your employees want to buy up into, they got to pay out of pocket. And he's going, yeah, my employees won't be able to afford that. So that's, you know, that's the major problem. You know, look, I can attest to, you know, many years ago when I had my first child, that, you know, I worked for a company where we had a $16,000 out of pocket health plan, and it was an embedded plan. My wife went to the hospital. She was in and out over a couple of days for labor. Then birth of the child. We get, you know, before I leave the hospital, they're saying, please sign this dotted line for $30 some odd thousand. And I'm going, I don't have it. And they're going, yeah, but your plan calls for you to pay almost $16,000, whatever it was. And I went, yeah, I don't have it. So I went on to like a payment plan of basically it was like $25 a month. And then eventually I just
for the rest of your life.
Well, yeah, pretty much for the rest of your life. But then I just got to a point where, you know, a couple of years ago, I called them and I said, you know what? I'm just going to pay it and be done with it. And I paid it off because obviously, thank God, I was in a different financial position to take care of it. So I didn't have that looming $25 bill until my kid would probably be married with their own kids. But that's what ends up happening. And then you have some hospital networks in the country that don't want to negotiate at all with you. And you know, they're willing to fight tooth and nail. And, you know, they'll come after you for the money, and they just won't let it go.
Yeah.
But it's good to know that there are organizations out there like yours that can help people that are in true financial need.
Yes, so I just want to say I agree, and I'm glad for the help that we're able to do. But I will say that we are not the solution to this problem, right? Like we're just like a finger in the dike, and honestly, it's really a problem. Which is why I'm insistent on making this issue more broad. I wanted to just respond to a couple of things in the chat. Somebody asked about. I just want to be clear. We find the debt and then we relieve it. We can't find individuals, so no one can apply to RIP. People can't, it's blind to who we help, except for the fact that we check to make sure that they actually, in terms of their TransUnion information and their income, et cetera, and their financial positioning, just based on that data, that they're facing financial hardship. But people, you know, I can't sort of say like with people who are behind on rent or people who have these other bills, they can't apply for us, and we can't do it that way. We have to find the debt and then do an analysis and then relieve those people that are eligible. And you know, somebody else commented about New York State being not a hotspot, and that's true. And that's in part because New York hospitals do not actually sell their debts to secondary markets, and so we don't have the debt through those secondary markets. They hold on to their debt. And at the end of the day, which is why we want to get more and more hospitals engaged directly, we need to get those hospitals to sell and engage with RIP directly in order to relieve those debts and for us to have a hotspot. It doesn't mean just our hotspots do not indicate where there's a lot of medical debt. It has to do with RIP's ability to access medical debt. So that's not an indication of medical debt not existing. It's a matter of us getting our hands on it.
Tom Farrell, would you mind just offering an opinion? I know you deal with a lot of companies. You know, your insights are always valuable. Do you ever run across the issue of medical debt in your practice?
Not directly, Alex, but indirectly, because so many business owners are concerned about the cost of insurance,
Sure.
like Ben was talking about. And many business owners are surprised to find out that as soon as they have employees, they have to have a workers' comp policy. They have to have a paid family leave policy. They have to have unemployment insurance. So insurance, broadly speaking, is an issue, not medical debt in particular. But I do have a question for Allison. Allison, if an individual or a small business is already in bankruptcy proceedings, is it too late to get help from your company?
Unfortunately, yeah. Anything that's been litigated, we can't take title to anything that's in litigation or has anything like that going on.
So you can't even approach the bankruptcy court with a solution if through a bankruptcy attorney or otherwise?
No, because you know the way it really works is we're doing such. I mean, we're taking title to like I just said, we just did a deal with Ballad Health in Tennessee, and we took title to 82,000 accounts at once, right? I mean, we don't have the ability to follow up with 82,000 or even a percentage of that, right? We're just sort of looking at it. We're never like actually contacting the people except to send them a letter and say, we took care of this. So it's just our model isn't structured to sort of dig in that individual way. There are other organizations that do that kind of work, but we do not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Allison, you must sleep very well at night.
I feel like I want to do more. So I'm sort of always thinking about like, how can we really scale this model so that we can get our hands on a lot more debt?
Right. And how can we help you? I'm sorry, Alex. I'm just like, what can we do for you?
I mean, honestly, get the word out about what we do. You know, obviously we run on donations, right? So like if you, if you're within a group that wants to do fundraising and wants to have a big impact and make a splash, like local papers, by the way, love this. So if you're looking to sort of get, some businesses sort of intentionally want to show that they're giving back. And I think RIP is a good example of that because there's a lot of, you can get a lot of press. It gets a lot of hits on social media. The medical debt issue is a big one. And I think it does give an opportunity for organizations to show that they're, engaging with the community and that they're doing something that's proactive. If you are part of a church, if you're part of a synagogue, if you have any inkling that you want to do something charitable, I think, looking at RIP is a good model because of the fact that it has such a big impact. And we could say, we raised this much money and it got rid of this much debt, and the numbers are huge.
Have you looked at going after like family offices and people who are really big into philanthropy to raise money from those folks?
I mean, we have, and we do get, the thing is, like, there's so much debt out there that, like, we could, you keep unfortunately pouring money into this problem. But yeah, I mean, like I said, we got $50 million from McKinsey Scott. That's huge. That's big, but it won't, if we just bought debt with that, which we're not doing that, what we're doing is we're investing in, like, trying to transform our ability to do this in the long term. I mean, we're in part buying debt with it for sure, but I'm not just like throwing it at it as is. But that gets rid of $5 billion of debt. The problem is that there's like $800 billion of debt out there. So just to give you some, a sense of that.
Allison, I'm sorry. So my name is Robert. So two things. One thing to explain, and here's an area, they just had it on the news in Channel 5 in New York this morning. Jeff Bezos' former wife just gave away $2.7 billion. So if your organization can approach her charity with
that's what I'm saying. We got 50 million from her.
Oh, you got 50. Okay.
Yeah, in December.
Okay.
In December, yep.
The other issue is that I don't think anyone realizes this hasn't been brought up yet, but it happened to me personally, so I can tell you what's going on. I'm not feeling that great. And my health care was held up for 4 months last year because of COVID, because there was a period of time in New York City when COVID was at its worst between April and July, where you could not go to a doctor for a lot of reasons because they couldn't see you because a lot of doctors' offices weren't open, especially for the first couple of months. They were not open. You could not make an appointment. I got the first appointment with my specialist in early July, who apologized to me because he's a lung specialist. He could not see a patient for 3 months because he was overwhelmed at the hospital with COVID. And that has a lasting effect on people's health. Right. So that's why I was in the chat about helping people out with their debt, okay, because it's a big issue. There are millions of people, and I'm not the only person, millions of people throughout the whole country, their healthcare was held up because they couldn't see a doctor because the doctors were saying, and my doctor actually told me, if you have to go to the hospital in the end of March into April, don't let your wife tell your wife not to take you. Because if you go to the hospital in New York City with whatever you got going on, you are not coming out alive because there's too much COVID in the hospitals. You will not, they said, save your wife's life, go there alone because you're not coming out. And he was just being honest. That's how bad it was back then. So you have millions of people that are going to be in the same situation, and it's going to go into the medical debt then that they're going to be carrying now because of all the follow-up, because they couldn't treat an illness for 4 months. You know what that does to people?
Okay. Annette, not Annette, but Allison, would you mind putting your contact information in the chat window? There are a number of people who have requested being able to contact you.
Yes,
and as a final, I please don't view this as putting you on the spot, but as a representative of Northwell Health, Annette, would you mind chiming in? What's your opinion about what you've heard? If you care to say. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm curious.
I think this is the most incredible news that I have heard. I have not heard about you before. You are doing God's work, Allison. Absolutely. From the perspective of the gentleman, Robert, who just spoke, I can attest to the fact that hospitals were hotspots, beyond hotspots. And all our doctors were redirected to just take care of COVID. It was just beyond belief and so hard to explain. I was taken off what I typically do, and I reached out to retired and who had
We're losing you.
And we had nurses come. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah. Okay. So just the point that Robert made, yes, we lived through some horrible months where people did not get the care they needed. However, the message must go out now that whatever you need taken care of, it is safe and you must do so. It's been that way for a number of months, but people still worry. So I guess that's what I have to say.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Now, excuse me 1 second. Excuse me 1 second.
Robert, we're going to have to end the meeting. You just hold off or put it in the chat.
I need to connect with the woman from Northwell. It's very important, please.
Yes, I am connected to Northwell. One of our board members is actually formerly of Northwell, so I'm all set there.
Okay.
Good.
Allison, thank you very much for the presentation. And if you're able to make that presentation available to me, I'll share it with the group if that's possible.
Sure,
And
happy
I
to.
really appreciate it. Next week, I think David is still here. We ran a little bit later than expected, but David is going to do a live from Israel segment next week. We'll have that up front. Stacy, welcome to the group. I hope that you return. And as usual, to all our regulars, thank you very much for joining us. It really means a lot to us. And
Thank you,
hope
Allison.
You come and see us on July 21st for the cocktail mixer. Thank you very much,
May,
Allison.
may I say something before
Yes,
we
Nancy,
close?
go ahead.
I'm
Go
so
ahead.
sorry, so sorry. I just wanted to plug in wearing my board of director cap on right now.
Yes.
But we have an upcoming QCP golf outing on June 30th.
30th. Right.
Now, I'm unable to golf on that day just because of some commitments, but I will be there for cocktails. And I invite everyone from this group. It would be wonderful if we can meet in person supporting QCP that has been so supportive to us as business owners. And I would love, 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 love to have you all join me, Wendy, and everyone else who will be there for golf, if you can golf, or at least for cocktails. I think it would be a lot of fun, and it would be wonderful for us to meet outside of the virtual space.
Thank
My
you,
little
Nancy.
plug-in.
We'll put that information in the follow-up note to this, along with the recording of the meeting. Thank you so much.
Melinda, it's at 3:30 at Engineers Country Club. So it's going to be a nice cocktail event in the afternoon.
Thank
It'll
you.
be wonderful. Thank you, Nancy. Mwah.
Pleasure.
Bye all.
Bye, everyone.